have Dr. Colombini from the Department of English to talk about her implementation of Open Resources OER in English 4433 Advanced Professional Writing.
Hi everyone. So I will just stand around over here and not over there because I'm too twitchy to stand behind a podium. But I have a few little things I'll just share with you here if you guys don't mind just passing those around in case you're interested. As Tina mentioned, I teach writing classes, and the place that I implemented the open access resources is in a class called English 4433. Actually, and I'll just steal one of those back because I kind of want to have one. Thank you. Which is a professional writing class, and so I'm hoping that a little bit of what I talk about, or maybe a lot, will be relevant to all of you, no matter what you teach, because of course, all of us ideally want to get more writing into our courses, and most of us pragmatically are struggling with the realities of that. And so I think potentially, my classes obviously are writing intensive classes. They are sort of designated as places where we do writing in this university. But I also think that some of the things that I'll talk about a little bit maybe point to some ways that people teaching different kinds of courses can integrate a little bit more engagement in that way, and potentially ways that make it easy and manageable for them. So just a little bit about my course. This was actually a course that's been on our books in the English department for a while, and it was sort of being taught in all these random ways, and those of us who are in the curriculum area of rhetoric and professional writing is what we call it, or professional writing and rhetoric, kind of got together and we decided that this class would be a capstone experience essentially for students who are finishing up in English or in professional writing and rhetoric, but it's also been really attractive to students across the disciplines. I've gotten a lot of students from psychology, a lot of students from medical humanities, a lot of students from communications, a lot of law students. And so this is a 25 student class. I can't brag the big savings numbers like some of you, but I will say actually I have a little bit of like a kind of response to that rhetoric just because I am working really personally with students who are finishing up here at UTSA. Nearly all of them are applying for graduate school, they're applying for law schools, they are facing the sort of onset of student loan payments. And I think that I see really, what I've seen is that not having to purchase a textbook affects them on a personal level in a really positive way. And so I think if you're teaching smaller classes, I would say, no offense, DM, but that's just as important, I think, to our students as having in a large lecture class where you can really tabulate some enormous savings. My students have been really, really, really excited and really positive about not having to purchase a textbook. Technical and professional writing textbooks are quite expensive. And the downside, and some of you may be experiencing this if you teach anything where students are coming from different areas or doing sort of different kinds of things, is that textbooks can only present one generalized perspective, right? And of course, things are changing all the time, right? I mean, for example, in writing studies, even to teach something like, the genre of a business letter or a memo or something like that, that's not even really possible anymore. We just don't do that really anymore because these things are changeable, they're dynamic, they're always shifting, and they're very situational. I mean, I know scientists and whatever, you guys hate these rhetoric people because everything's situational to us, everything's changeable, right? Yes, maybe they don't hate us, it's a strong word, but I think we see things as very situated, and so we try to teach students in that way, right? How can you get out into the world and apply this, thinking about how it might work in this particular situation. So again, just to go back to the sort of goals of this particular course, I'm really looking at sort of professionalizing. This is one of the last places we see our students before they graduate UTSA and they leave us. They're, usually the semester I have them, whether it's fall or spring, nearly all of them are graduating that semester. And they're really thinking about how to look back on their experience at UTSA and sort of bring it together in some kind of cumulative story. So I have been really lucky in terms of having a field that's very supportive of open access resources. My field, we would sort of call ourselves rhetoric and composition, or writing studies, or composition and rhetoric, depending on your affiliation. But there's a big movement in my field toward open access resources, both in terms of teaching resources and in terms of scholarship. And people are really pushing for some of the scholarship to match with this sort of pedagogical impetus toward more open access resources. And the good news for any of you that do anything with writing or want to send students to any kind of resource about writing is that writing people, writing studies people, writing experts are putting lots and lots of resources online. So Probably most of you are familiar with sites like Purdue's OWL website, right? If you don't want your students to have to buy a Chicago handbook or an APA handbook or an MLA handbook, hey, go look at Purdue's OWL. The people who maintain that site, they are specialists, they are PhD students, and they are actively working on making sure that everything's updated, that the resources are very accessible. So probably most of you, no matter what field you're in, you're aware of some of that. But there's also quite a lot more. So the site that I used, Dan, do you want me to pull it up? One of the main sites that I found helpful is the Writing Commons. And again, I'll share this with you just because I think it could be relevant to other people than just people in writing. It's just an example of one of the places where scholars of writing are putting things online meant to help students with a variety of different kinds of work. So if you were to come to the site, you would see that there's chapters on just general things, writing process, editing, sentence structure, grammar, point of view, mechanics, writing theses, styles, you name it, right? And then also a lot more kind of contemporary things like creating digital, digital compositions, right? Things like infographics, videos. I do a lot of that in my class. Posted, data visualizations. How do you create good data visualizations? So even for those of you in the sciences and math, if you're working with, talking to your students about ethical representations of data, you may find some helpful sources in sites like this. And then for me, a lot of things about memos, proposals, reports. And what's great about a site like this is that it gives students, for me in my class, it gives us sort of a core of stability in terms of, hey, we still kind of have a textbook. This is one of our core resources. We come to it a lot. We trust the discourse. It's analytical. It's oriented towards students. And so what I've been able to do as I redesign my class is, so if you guys see on the back page of this handout, I'm sort of seeing my approach to online access resources in my class in two ways. One was adapting my existing assignments and work to be supported by these things. So things I already teach, like one of my projects in this class is a client-based project where students prepare a memo report, an infographic, and a video message. And I have a couple handouts of this assignment if anybody's interested. But I find a lot of great stuff up here that helps us talk about, okay, what does it look like to write a report? What do we do when we're citing? How do we do research when we do projects like this? But then also what I can do is draw on other things that help students situate and interpret in different situations. So, I have a psychologist. I have someone in medical humanities. I have someone in professional writing. I have someone who wants to be a technical writer. I have someone who wants to go to law school. So I can say, okay, here are some general information. And then I can say, okay, go find some more open access resources that help you understand how that genre gets tailored in your field. And so that's what I do a lot of in my class is I establish a set of shared online access resources, and then I send them out to find other things that help them modify and adjust their perspective. And so this works basically in every assignment I do in my class. How do people write reports in your field? What are the trends in resume writing in your field? What are some of the ways that people talk to clients and propose work for clients in your field? And so I think just for me, being oriented toward what we can find online has helped me find ways to be more accommodating when I think about different disciplinary differences and ways that I can kind of help students see how things work situationally in sort of different kinds of things rather than trying to internalize some sort of set message about writing or set message about a genre, right? I mean, the truth is that depending on the situation, you're going to write differently. And so that's what I think open access resources for me has been really helpful. And then the second way that I've integrated some open access resources, I guess what I would say the second thing I've kind of done, the second prong of my approach, has been also to adapt new assignments that would help, that would kind of support, or adapt new assignments that would kind of be oriented and more driven toward available information. And so for me, one of those has been a profession blog. I have a couple examples of that assignment too, if anybody's interested in seeing it. And also I have a couple examples of a post that I graded today when I was grading the students' blog projects. So what I have them do for this project, it's an online project throughout the course, a continuing project throughout the course. I have them start a blog, and as we talk about different professional communication issues through the class, they blog weekly to an audience of professionals about that issue as it affects their field. So they're thinking about things like, how do we write effective proposals again? Or how do we deal, what are some ethical communication issues in our field? How do we how do we deal with things like data design or data visualization? And they write online, and they write to an audience, an imagined audience in their field. And this has been great because there are tons of resources online, not necessarily under the rubric of a textbook, right, but just kind of available things, both in terms of instruction, how do you blog for professional purposes, and also in terms of models, right? So rhetorical models. This is one of those places, I don't know if you guys have noticed this about UTSA students. When I first got here, I started getting asked almost right away, like, but can you show us an example? Like, don't just give us the instruction, show us an example. So I got wise to that and started saving student examples every semester so that the next time I taught, ask a student who had a really good project, hey, can I share this next time? And now I have a bank of student examples, which I think the students really appreciate. For some reason, where I came from, I just, I never heard so much, can I see a model? Can I see a model? And I get a lot of that here. And so for me, what I find is that when I do a project like a profession blog, it's a place where students can synthesize some of the learning we do. They are thinking also themselves about the value of putting knowledge and ideas online, right? Like the sort of like paying it out into the world. How can I share my knowledge with the world in ways that may help other people like me, or maybe people slightly behind me in this process? But also not just as a sort of an altruistic action, but also as a way of developing a professional standing and a professional identity. And so that's one of my big goals in this particular course, is that I want students to come out of here feeling like they have a professional identity, that they can say, like, hey, here's who I became, here's what I bring to the table, right? The idea of personal branding, it's such a marketized idea, and I'm a little critical of it in some ways, but I think it's a big part of today's workforce, is being able to kind of identify and talk about who we are uniquely, not just I'm an accountant or I can do this thing, but also like I'm passionate for this thing, I bring this to the table. And so what I found is that there's a lot of stuff out there between, again, just sort of the more traditional textbook type discourse, but also this sort of like broad conversation on professional writing and professional identity, professional voice, and that really is open to variation of discipline. I think when you start to look for these things, that's where you start to see even, because I have had students from art history actually in this class, and they sometimes at first say, well, I don't know, how do I write a resume in art history? And I go, look, well, all of a sudden they can find things, and there are people out there saying, hey, here's what art historians should do when they do X, Y, and Z. And so again, I think that it helps. It's been really helpful just in orienting me toward the world of what's out there on the internet that could help my teaching and help my students. So yeah, I've been really appreciative of that. It's been great. To your question earlier about like, what did this help you do? I think sometimes just having the support of a grant is about establishing mental space, right? Like, how can I afford to give this time to this when I would give it to something else, right? So I haven't personally translated my support into anything, I guess, other than conference attendance, which helps me, sort of learn about this in my field more generally. But also, I think it's just like, this is going to take time, right? How can I get rid of this textbook and sort of divest it from my syllabus? How can I reintegrate these other things, and how do I change my assignments as a result? And I think, again, just being able to be supported by the grant is really helpful in terms of just making the space to do that. I've kind of felt guilty for a long time that I hadn't done more of this in my class, and so now I'm like, yes, I'm like at the forefront and the cutting edge of this wonderful open access resource stuff. So I'm really appreciative of the support.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. And I do have to step out, but I will leave this stuff in case anybody is interested in looking at any of that, and feel free to contact me if you have any more questions. Oh, I should ask if there's any questions. Okay, have a good one.
Actually, I do have one.
Yes.
So this resource here, in terms of scope and sequence and depth of coverage, is it similar to what you were using with a commercial textbook?
Very much, and again, it's probably because the people who are writing and contributing to this, it's multiple contributors, but they're all experts, PhDs in the field.
Yeah.
And they are the same kind of people who would be writing textbooks,
okay.
Only they've sort of had the realization that, hey, we should be doing more to democratize and open access.
And it's openly licensed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
And this is not the only one. Another thing that's mentioned on the handout is that there are publishers in my field who are starting to publish solely open access resources as well. So the WAC Clearinghouse is another one. All the textbooks of everything they publish are available. So sometimes if I need a little bit more of a scholarly perspective, I'll pull from there. But yeah, like I said, I'm lucky. I know not everyone has access to this kind of stuff, but it is very helpful. Thanks very much.